In this video, we are going to be looking at setting up a background and putting together a game level using tile sets within Unreal for the 2D game. So leading on from the last video, the last couple of videos, we have looked at creating 2D paper sprites, flipbooks. We have looked at tile maps and tile sets in the past. We're going to have a look at putting together a level as one inside one tile map. It's a little bit different to how I showed the last time to create your assets for in the game. So from the last video, we should have a goblin character that we set up. So that's a viewport. Got this character that we set up the jump and walk for. Have added a little bit to the jump, but I'll go through that in another video. All we really need is a character with the camera set up and the spring arm. I found that the camera is best on orthographic as so. That should be fine. Just save and compile that. Okay, so you should have a file like this. The only thing we're going to keep is this network player starts. This is where the player begins. So the background is going to go, all these platforms are going to go because we're going to replace them with auto level. So we start by deleting the ones at the side. Delete these. You'll see they're popping up in the side. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to select them in there and delete them. And then the background, so this background sprite, delete that. The only thing we should really have is this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our side scroller BP. I'm going to create a new folder and call this background. Inside this background folder, we're going to bring in some backgrounds that should be created. So I'm trying to find mine. Desktop to begin. So I have a background dungeon here. I'm going to make a bit of a dungeon for the goblin. So I'm going to drag that into the content browser. This is the background I'm going to be using. Let's click save. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, mine's not showing it on here, but I'm just going to create a paper 2D sprite. This is so we can put the background in on its own, sort of like we did with some of the assets in a couple of videos ago. So we create a sprite, call this dungeon background sprite. Remember, you want to be naming them best you can, because the more and more we create, the more and more this is going to get lost in file systems, so it's easy to search them. So inside here, once we've created that, we're going to go to source texture, and here you'll see we've got all these idle goblins and things. What we're looking for is that background dungeon. This is all fine, so we can save this, close this off. So what we can now do is we can drag this dungeon background into the scene like this. Remember, we want this to be at the location of Y0. Oh, sorry, if we put it at Y0, that's going to be where the player is. So we need to put it behind the player, so it needs to be negative. I think the original one from the setup, the pre-made setup, is about 400. So minus 400. And then what we're going to do, make sure your scale's locked at the end so you can scale them all together. I'm just going to scale this right up. So we've got a background. Obviously you can tweak this how you want, but I'm going to put it to 5. I think that will work quite well. So with that dungeon background sprite, you might want to just drag that up into the background folder up here. Create a background folder, right click in and create a folder. So you've got that in there. So what we're going to do next is create a level. So we've got the background in there, we've got our player in there from the last video. So we're next going to create an actual level or set that up. So what we're going to do, we're going to right click and create a new folder. We're going to call this engine level assets. Obviously you can call this whatever you feel relevant to your game. It's just making sure you've got these things separated up. So in here, I'm going to bring in a tile set. So you should all have tile sets like this. Where I'll drag it in to show you. It's a bit easier to see. So we drag that in, open it up, and you should have some tiles like this. Just put that in, save it, and then from here we need to separate this up into the squares that we've talked about in the past. So that 64 by 64 split, when we set up tile sheets in one of the first videos, it's going to be quite important here. So again, you might be able to right click on there and get up to the options, but it's not coming up on my computer. So I'm just going to right click, paper 2D, and create a tile set. I'm going to call this dungeon tile set. Remember, using underscores instead of spaces. So inside the dungeon tile set, on screen like this, the tile sheet texture, we're going to go in and go and search for dungeon tile sheet. Obviously yours will be called whatever it is, but that's why again it's important to be naming it correctly. So now if we click on here, selecting the squares too small. So we need to get this so it's doing, instead of a quarter of the block, it's doing the whole block. So we're going to set this to 64. So at the moment, it's selecting them like so, which is how you would have set them up. So when you split it up on Photoshop, it should be in 64 by 64 squares on your grid. And that's what these will be equal to. So it should work quite well. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to set up the collisions. So the important thing here is set up all your collisions first, and then when we put the level together, it'll make a bit more sense of why we've done it first. And once it's done, it takes a bit longer than the method we showed in the past, but once it's done, it'll make it quicker to set up your levels. So to set up a collision, we select one of these boxes. So click on box, so say it's this barrel. What we're going to do is in this screen over here, when we click add box, it'll add a box to the size of the 64 by 64. Now you can do it like that. So say it was, I don't know, this square here where it's literally going to be the 64 by 64. We can just press add box. Yeah. So we're going to go back to this one because on this one, the shape is slightly smaller. So what we're going to do is, you may want to make this a little bigger just so you can see it a bit better, is you can double click and then you can drag these down to the closer to your barrel. And on the other side, double click. What I do first is I get your edges pulled in close, like so. you can select your vertex and move them. And also you can add vertices by holding shift and clicking. It does say it up here. It is in quite small text, but it does say it. So on this curve here, I may want to add a vertex there and there. I want it each. Actually, I'm going to select these and pull them up to around here. Got the edges of the vertices there. Pull them up to about where the barrel goes, and then I'm going to add some about where the barrel ends before it starts curving. And then if we add one at each end at the top and at the bottom. So we're going to select the corner ones and just pull them in. So what we're really looking for is to sort of get a bit more of the actual shape. It is a little fiddly, but once the collisions are set, it means your characters will be able to interact with them much better. So your collision will happen much more precisely to where you've set this box. So for example, when it's set like this, your character will slide down the side, won't be able to jump on it. Whereas if it was out here like it was like that, the character's going to be able to stand on it here with a gap between that and the barrel, which isn't what we want. So we want it quite close in, creating that sort of barrel shape. So what we need to do is we need to go through, for example, this one. You can see the box is slightly off when we add it, so we just need to pull this in. Now all we're going to do is we're just going to go through each one of these squares. So you can see that barrel's around the barrel, around the box. This doesn't have one, so this needs to have one. And we're just going to go through these tiles and add them how we want them to work. So I'm just going to go through and do a few more of these. For example, this one, you can also use the add polygon. So the add polygon will let you draw the shape, but you've got to be careful because what it does quite often is it'll just do a triangle, like so, and then when you click again, it's going all over the place, like so. And then what you have to do is you have to go in, move these around. So the add polygon tool isn't always the best option because it can cause you to have to go in and fix quite a few things afterwards. So what I'm actually going to do here is just create this the best I can. So I think I just need one more. So if I just shift click to add one more, and you can see this is much closer to the actual shape of the object. So the character will be able to fall in between to this point and land here. You don't want them just like hovering at the top. So I'll just create some of these platforms. So again, this one you might want to use the box. Get close to what you're looking for with the box. Again, this one will probably be coming in. You might want to pull it a little bit further in, just so it's not quite on the edge so your character isn't going to be falling off. So then what you can do is just shift here, a bit more of that curve, and again here. Just have it like that. Next one, going to be very close to a box, so I'll just pull that one down. I wouldn't go through doing all this detail with extroverts unless you're going to do it. Like the character's going to walk on it. So I know the character isn't really going to interact too much with that. So as long as it's like there, that'll be fine. Add another box. So again, I think the box is probably the best place to start. Just get it set up like this. And then, like I said, you can just curve this in. Then shift click. Add a bit more. Shift click on here. Now you can always come back and edit these if you're having issues when you're in your game. You see when we go back on these, they've saved them. That one has been done. I'm only going to do a few of these just to show as an example, but what we need to do is we need to go through and do all of these for the level. So for example, I do want to do this platform here, just because it's quite good to show how it works with the collisions in game. So you'll be able to see later. So just quickly go through and set these up. And this one's just going to be a box. That one's just going to be a box. And this one on the other side. We'll start off with a box and bring that in. Maybe you just want that as close to the level as you can. So that's where your character's going to be stood on. So again, this one's going to be a box at the top. This one may be worth using the polygon tool because it does a triangle really well. So there to there, there up, and just click back on that one. You see it says close. That means it's going to close the loop, like so. And then I'll just do it the same on the other side. So to close. So you can see we've got all these different shapes depending on where they are. Obviously, you go through and do all this stuff. Just going to add a collision to these two because we're going to use these as side walls. So add this one. Probably bring it into there and then shift add some extra. Something like that. Again, add box. Again, you can get it perfect if you want, but I think for the most part, you just want it roughly right. If you are having issues later on, then go in and fix it. So something like that would work. Okay, so we've got what we're going to use for the side. Obviously, things like ladders, or they might not actually be ladders, but they look like ladders. If your character's going to go over them, sort of climb up them, you can't have a collision because your character won't be able to get in front of it. So just be wary of that if there is anything like that you've got. But I'm just going to press save, and we've got these all set up, the ones we want to use. So we're just going to close this now. And now what we're going to do is we're basically going to set up a level within the game. So we're going to right click, go to paper 2D, and we're going to create a tile map. So on this tile map, we're going to call this dungeon level 01. It's always good to use a 0 before the digit so you've got extra room to go. So if I've got 2 digits, so 0, 1, when I get to 10, when I search 1, it's not just coming up with 1 and 10, 11, 12, 13, so on. We can just search 0, 1, we'll be able to find the first one. So dungeon level 0, 1, and then tile map. I've got dungeon level 0, 1 tile map, dungeon tile set, and the dungeon tile sheet, which I created in Photoshop. So the dungeon levels tile map, the tile map we're looking at, we're going to double click that. And inside this window, we have a few things. We have, on the left, we can paint, erase, fill, which I'm going to go through in a second. You can turn on a tile grid, so you can see the blocks that we're going to paint on. On the right, we have different layers, so you can put things in the foreground, the background, but it does create them all on the same level, so just be aware of that, in the sense of it won't be the actual background. We need that in, like we set that up. This is just for the things that are in game. So maybe there's a block you walk behind some grass, something like that. There may be a wall you walk behind, that would be put in the foreground, and then your character can walk behind it. So the other thing that's important here is you can set up your tile width and height, as well as your tile width and height, sorry, your map width and height, and then your tile width and height. Now we know we're working on 64 by 64, so we're just going to change that. So each one of these squares now are 64 by 64. And we also know we want it to be bigger than 4 blocks. So in here, we're going to set this up. This is obviously up to yourselves, depending on how big your level is going to be and things like that. But the height, I would say maybe have that around 10. So you just want to zoom out. You can hold the right click and drag to move it around. And then we know we're going to want it maybe 25 wide. So again, we want to set the axis up like so. Again, you can change this best to your level. It's completely up to you. What we're going to do next is we're going to go to this active tile set. Now here, you can go back and forth between tile sets you've brought in. So if you have multiple ones and you want to use a little bit of one and a little bit of another, you can do that. But basically what we need to do here is click this pick an asset from pop-up menu, and it'll come up with the tile sets available. I've only got one at the moment, which is the dungeon one. I think also you can use the search, but we're just going to use that one. And in here, your tile set will come up with the collisions that we've just set up already on there. So I'm going to select this one first, just this block on its own. And with its on paint, what you can do is if you click, it'll add it to it. So what I can do now is I can go across the bottom, because I know this is going to be the bottom of the level where the character's going to walk most of the time. Just drag, click and drag, and it'll do blocks all the way across. So then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this one as the edges, just going down, just so I know that the character is not going to be able to flip it, walk out of that area. So I know the character's not going to be walk off the edge this way, walk off the edge this way. So they're stuck within the game level. You may want to put a roof on it. So you may want to use, again, something like this. It's completely up to yourselves. It depends if you feel like your character is going to go up and above. So if you've got a level here, your character might be able to jump above, it depends. Obviously this is something you've got to set up. So once you've got your outline sort of in place, this is what I would suggest doing first. Then what you can do is you can actually use the erase tool if you wanted to delete a block, if you've done something wrong, go back to paint to fill it in. You also have rotate tools, so you can rotate things. But one of the big things is I would be careful using fill, because fill will just fill the whole thing, which we don't want. But with the paint tool on, we can actually select, we can drag select in this view and select size. So say I wanted this platform, I can just select those three. And as you can see, it's added that platform as well. So I can go in and so I wanted a platform there, then wanted a platform a bit higher, one up here, say, for example. And you can go in and create a level like so. So then, say I wanted this section, can't quite select that one as one because it's going to drag the other piece in. I don't want that. So I'm just going to select these pieces. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create this like so, and then just select that extra piece and select that in. What I could do is I could actually erase this piece and this piece and select this one again, this one from the middle, and just fill that in. So you can start creating your level with different shapes. I can go back to the barrel. I can maybe use this something to help you jump over. If I want to just delete these just in case it's in the way for you to jump over. Maybe there's a box here to help you up. Some bricks behind it, that's why you can't go through. Maybe that's forcing you to go that way. Maybe I want to have some spikes down here, because if you fall, then you're going to get damage. Again, there might be a bit of a challenge here. Jump over some spikes. Again, maybe that is part of the challenge of the level, and so forth. Maybe the aim is to get to these two question marks at the end. So as you can see, I've just quickly built a level with these pieces. You can go in, change these how you want, add extra bits. If you wanted a ladder, start, do something like that. It's going to do that because the ladders don't work very well, because the collisions aren't there. So the last thing you can do in here is, well, one thing you can do is you put your grid to just see where your blocks are placing. You can turn that off. But you can actually use layers, so you can have things in the foreground and background. So now what I've got currently is all this on one layer. So I'm just going to call this player level. This is where the player is going to run through. So say I wanted I don't know, it's not much here, a box. Say there's a wall here that I want to have behind the player. I can add a new layer. Call this. You're gonna let me rename it. Right click rename. Background. And when I've got this layer clicked, I can maybe create a section here, that's going to be a tower. And if I actually click that I button, turns whatever's on that layer on and off. As you can see, background layer needs to be lower. I need to move this down. So to do that, we just click on the layer and then click this down arrow to send it backwards. Just going to send it behind. So you can see these are now behind. If we wanted some barrels in front, I could add another layer. Put this foreground. Again, we may want the character to walk behind something, so like a barrel. Have that there. And then you have your level put together. I would be careful just with your collisions. If you are having issues with your layers, like the thing, your collisions are causing your character not walk behind them, maybe take them out and choose one layer and then add those in as sprites like we showed on the on one of the first videos, or you could create a second tile map, sorry, and use that on a different position. Now I've got this set up, I'm just going to press save, close this. So now this is set up, what we're going to do is we're just going to drag this into the scene. So see it's quite small at the moment. What I would do, I would move it over to this edge because we can see it's going to work from the corner on the scaling. We're going to set our location to 0. We're going to then make sure our scale is locked. I'm going to bring this in a little bit. And then we're going to scale this up so it's much closer to the size of the background and the actual level we want. So now you've sort of got a level put together. Now, the next thing you need to do is double check your character is in the right place. So I know I want my character to start over this side. Drag them down. Just make sure they're on 0 as well. Now that all that's been done, one thing I will be looking at is changing the jump in a new video. But for now, what we have from last time should work. You might just not be able to jump over things. But we'll see how that goes. I may do it in this video if we are having issues. So we're going to go to play. Now, one thing I noticed is things are working, but my camera is too close. So we're going to just press escape. Go back to our goblin from last time. A goblin character. Go to viewport. Zoom out. Select the camera. We are going to make this width 2048. Go to the spring arm. That seems okay. So press save and compile. Let's try this. So we now press play. Our character is in a much better position. And I've edited the jump slightly on mine. So he can jump higher. Ooh. So you can see, I can jump across. So the character can walk in front of these bricks that we put on the background. Collision is working there. So it's, you see, this was triangle that we set up the collision. That's why it can go up here as a triangle. Now this one on the foreground is causing an issue. So that may be something we'd have to delete. Bring back in. Again. Try and get out. Try and get up. But the game is working in that level. Again, go back to the dungeon level. back to that tile map. So this foreground stuff, we are just going to delete. Press save. We know everything else works. I think the camera, we're just going to have a look at it a bit further out. So we're going to go back to the goblin character, back to the viewport, go to your camera, actually your spring arm. If we change the target, it'll push the camera back. So if we just keep pushing this back and press save and compile, that will be a bit better when we press play now. Set up the same. So it's just about tweaking this. So we go back in, viewport again, to the camera, say rated 2048. Maybe we make it 4096. It's really high, but should zoom it right out. So we press play now. Yeah, we can see we're quite far out. You can see all the level. So this may be a bit glitchy at the moment because we've not set up all the parameters properly, such as your jump may fall. The fall is quite slow. You can see the game level is coming together. Okay. So now with your ability to set up a character to move around and the ability to set up a game level, you should be able to have somewhat of a beginnings of a game ready. In the next video, I will show you how to set up some more blueprint stuff for your character, such as editing the jump so you can jump higher or not as high. We'll move on to that in the next one.